Hi, everyone. Kayla here, and the next couple of weeks for One Nation Under Crime are going to look a little bit different. Remember back in December, we did some USBS bonus episodes that we released on the feed? Well, we're going to put a couple of those out here so you can get a little bit of a taste on what you've been missing out on. This week, we're putting up our episode about the actual first gold rushes of the United States. And I think that this is going to be one that you guys are really going to like. So if you do decide after listening to this, Kayla, we love this so much, we absolutely want to be a Patreon subscriber, then guess what? Go to patreon.com/OneNationUnderCrime and you can be in on the fun as well. Let's get to the episode. You are listening to One Nation Under Crime, but this is not your normal One Nation Under Crime. This is USBS, where we discuss the historical BS of the U.S. These are the episodes that cover a wide variety of historical topics. Could be a person, could be an event. Either way, it is exclusively for our patrons. And we promise we will try to have a good time and learn something along the way.
Promise.
I'm Kayla.
And I'm Leah.
We're going to get into it. Our sources for this week, we're going to go ahead and get those out of the way. We have the Vintage News, the NCpedia, and the Georgia Encyclopedia. And this is the first of something that people assume the first is something else.
I mean, that's not confusing at all.
Nope. So much of history is lost when you really think about it. There are times when we are told it was the first when it wasn't really the first. Or we assume it was the first because we've never heard of another one. Well, this is one of those things. This month, the BS that we are digging into are the first gold rushes in the United States. We've got to go back in time for this one, and everything began in 1799 in what is now known as Cabarrus County, North Carolina. It all started with a 12-year-old boy named Conrad Reed. He was fishing on his family's property when suddenly he noticed something shiny in the waters.
I get distracted by shiny things.
We know. Of Little Meadow Creek. He took the 17-pound yellow rock out of the water and carried it home.
My.
His father was a Hessian, I believe that's how you say it, which is a German man who was under contract with the British government, but then abandoned during the Revolutionary War.
I think Hessian is
I think
correct.
it's Hessian. So his name was Johannes Reith. Like many of his fellows, Johannes had deserted his British unit during the American Revolutionary War. He changed his name to John Reed and fled to Cabarrus County. John thought that the yellow rock Conrad found was just an ordinary rock and didn't pay much attention to it. Gold was not commonly seen in their community, and the value of it was not yet understood.
Wow.
So the gold rock was used as a doorstop in the family's home for several years. Years later, John decided to take the rock to a local jeweler just to see if it was worth anything. The jeweler offered him $3.50. This would be $63 today, but that did equal 1 week of pay for a farm laborer back then. And John thought it was a pretty fair deal, $3.50. As you are probably thinking, this was not at all a good deal.
No.
Because the value of the 17-pound gold rock was actually worth $3,600 in the early 1800s.
Oh, my.
Yeah. John quickly realized that he made a huge mistake and he went out to find more. Little Meadow turned into a full-on mining operation, and the gold just kept coming in.
Please tell me that family got more and made more money.
So John Reed partnered with a few men, Frederick Kaiser, James Love, and Martin Pfeiffer. Eventually, the men found another massive gold rock. The weight, 28 pounds.
Oh, good.
This sparked the beginning of the Carolina Gold Rush, which is the first significant gold rush in the United States. News of the discovery was quickly spread. Gracious, I had some. Anyways, news of the discovery was quickly spread by regional newspapers, and landowners across the area began to search for gold on their property. Nearly all of the land was privately owned, and the beginning of the Carolina Gold Rush was largely conducted by farmers at the end of their growing season each year. Gold was being found everywhere in the neighboring counties of Montgomery, Stanley, Mecklenburg, Rowan, and Union. Thomas Jefferson even came in 1804 to check and make sure that the rumors were true. Then mines started to pop up all around the state. William Thornton. That name might sound familiar because he was the designer of the U.S. Capitol.
There you go.
We talked about him in episode 38. He purchased 35,000 acres of land in what is now Stanley County and formed the North Carolina Gold Mine Company. By 1806, investors in this company included a former governor of Maryland and the treasurer of the United States at the time.
They were in it to win it.
Yeah. There is not much detailed information about those who first came seeking gold to the area. Initially, local landowners did most of the mining, and the first newcomers to arrive were just from the neighboring states. Many farmers eventually sold their mineral rights and sometimes their entire farm to speculators and entrepreneurs who were hoping to unearth large quantities of gold. For anyone who doesn't know what mineral rights are to land, because some people don't know what that, you can sell the mineral rights to your land, but not your land.
Right.
So you can, a lot of people will sell sell oil rights. And so basically that means like, if someone owns the oil rights, but you own the land, say you struck oil on your land, if someone owned the oil rights, you have no claim over that oil, even though it was on your land because you sold your rights. Right. So a lot of these farmers were selling their mineral rights and not their farms.
It's kind of like a gamble, you know, like, hey, this is money in hand that they're giving me in hopes that they will hit it rich in, you know, hitting oil.
But there's no promise.
There's no promise on their end that they will get something. But I'm definitely guaranteed this money that they're giving me.
But I could also be sitting on a lot of money.
Right, but I don't have the money to bring in this equipment to dig for it,
or just didn't want to.
Or hey, right. So this is a way of I'm gonna. Hey, they'll give me this money so I can do X, Y, and Z. I can fix up the barn. I can buy, you know, crops for next year or the milk cow that I need or whatever. And hey, they can go dig all they want over there, and if they find gold, hey,
it's theirs.
I missed out, but I don't think they're going to find any.
Exactly. Let's see. But then another event occurred that would increase the number of prospectors coming to the state's gold fields. You could almost say that they struck gold again. Because in 1825, Matthias Barringer discovered that gold could be found in the veins of white quartz. And by following these veins of quartz into the ground, one could recover more gold.
Oh.
Prior to this discovery of all of the mining Prior to this discovery, like all of the mining conducted in North Carolina had been above ground, or it's called placer mining.
Mm-hmm.
It's spelled like placer, but it's placer. Short A, not long A. With Behringer's discovery of lode mining, which is underground mining, and it's not lode, L-O-A-D, it's L-O-D-E. But it is confused a lot between the two, but it's
like mother lode.
Yes, like lobe, like a brain lobe, but with a D.
Mm-hmm.
So that. The rush into North Carolina was officially on. People came from far and wide to make their fortunes, and many of the most important lode mines were located in or around Charlotte, North Carolina. In 1829, J. Humphrey Bissell, not sure if he's one of those Bissells, couldn't find that out, but he was from Charleston, and he bought a portion of a mine and brought with him not only new technology, but also men who were experienced in South American mining. At one point, there was one Charlotte mine that employed almost 1,000 workers. And in that mine, over 13 different languages were spoken.
Cool. I bet it would be neat just to hear.
It was really, I thought that was really interesting. And we're about to go into kind of who all these people were, kind of as like to what areas they came from. So Count Vincent de Rivafiore.
Well,
yep.
Thank you, sir.
He was an Italian aristocrat, and he was experienced in mining and like engineer mining. He was head of the Mecklenburg Gold Mining Company. With his ties to mining in Italy, he brought as many as 80 expert miners in from England, Germany, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Switzerland, Italy, and France.
Wow.
Among the European workers, miners from Cornwall, England, had the greatest influence on North Carolina mining culture. The Cornish miners had developed techniques for lode mining over several centuries, extracting tin and copper from their native land.
Mm-hmm.
They shared their knowledge and expertise with the locals in North Carolina. These miners taught proper and safe techniques for lode mining and were also experts in the process of milling gold ore and the use of steam technology to extract the ore. Very interesting.
That's intriguing.
Yes, they were. We'll talk a lot more about them, but it was very interesting to know about kind of how they came in. So, the use of steam engines soon spread from gold mining to other North Carolina industries like textile mills, and the Cornish immigrants are the ones who brought that technology over.
Makes sense.
Many of the immigrants who came to North Carolina during the gold rush were young or middle-aged men. And they were single men.
Of course they were. I mean, that makes sense.
Exactly. Unaccompanied by women or children, they were able to move freely from one mining area to another, which made them valuable to mine operators. In the 1830s and 1840s, the state was home to about 56 different mining operations, and boom towns were established to support the industry. And it's estimated 25,000 workers that came to the state.
25,000.
Yes. So now we kind of know why boomtown started. It was because of this like massive influx of people to these areas.
Mainly men.
Yes. By 1831, our friend John Reed had also begun expanding to lode mining. The government saw the massive rush of gold coming out of North Carolina, and it was in 1835 that Andrew Jackson signed into law a bill to open 3 branch mints. We did talk about this in our episode in 1835. They opened these mints in New Orleans, in Charlotte, and in Dahlonega, Georgia.
Have you been to Dahlonega?
I have not, but we're going to talk a lot more about it.
It is a lovely,
I've heard
lovely little town.
I've heard that. The ones in Charlotte and Dahlonega were to specifically mint the newly discovered gold. That's why they put them in those two areas. Because if you remember, Charlotte was where a bulk of the mines were. And then we're going to go into Dahlonega in a bit as to why it went to Dahlonega. Because there's actually two massive gold rushes that occurred before California. This is the first, obviously. So, John Reed's mining company eventually closed due to disputes among the men. And in 1845, John Reed died, a very wealthy man. It's estimated that between 1803 and 1846, when like everything officially shut down after he passed, the Reed gold mine yielded $1 million in gold then.
Oof.
Yeah. And if $350 was like $63,
yeah,
imagine how much that is. So
nice.
Yeah. And actually today, Reed Gold Mine is recognized as the site of the first authenticated gold find in the United States. It is a National Historic Landmark, and it is listed on the National Register of Historical Places. You can go to Reed Gold Mine today, and you can pan for gold and walk around the restored mining tunnels, which I think would be fun.
That's neat. What about
It says they're restored, so
descendants?
I don't know. I didn't see anything,
that would be really neat.
But yeah, I mean, he did have children because he had Conrad, who was the one who originally found it. So I was curious when I saw that too. I wondered because, usually it's these families way back then that started that become like the Rockefellers.
Vanderbilts.
The Vanderbilts. Yes, there we go. The Biltmores, like all of those families. Those are the ones that originally started in those like industries.
By the way, I'm watching The Gilded Age on HBO.
We've discussed
you need
in
to
a previous
watch
episode.
You need to watch it. Okay.
I don't have time for these things. Anyways,
make time.
I'm busy. I have this thing called a podcast that I have to do research for every week. It's a bit much.
I have somebody that does that for me.
I know, right? Must be nice. So you remember those single men who were doing all of the mining? Well,
they needed some families.
They jumped ship as soon as they heard about California.
Ruh-roh.
But remember the Cornish miners who basically taught everyone everything that they knew?
Uh-huh.
They moved with their families, so their situation was a little different. They were known to be skilled, superstitious, and clannish, and strongly Methodist. Sure. Unlike the single prospectors who followed the gold to California, many of these Cornish miners and their families stayed in North Carolina. And they especially stayed in the lode mining centers of Charlotte. And they were in the Gold Hills. Nope. They were in the city of Gold Hill in Rowan County specifically. The Cornish have a unique culture of their own, and they have a specific dialect and customs. But because the Cornish also spoke English, they and their descendants quickly melded into American life, making their cultural influence difficult to actually pinpoint. So people didn't know that they were from England because they kind of just fell in and kind of Americanized their speaking patterns, and no one really knew where they were from. So they kind of just like hid under the radar, which I thought was interesting. Let's see. However, the influence that they had on North Carolina's emerging industries is unmistakable. In the early 1800s, North Carolina was known as the Rip Van Winkle state because so little progress was made that the state appeared to be asleep. The gold industry that the Cornish helped build influenced other developments in industry, commerce, and infrastructure that helped North Carolina lose the reputation of being asleep.
Well, good for them.
North Carolina wasn't the only state to mine gold before California, though. Georgia joined them in 1828. No one really knows how. this occurred or the story. There's a few options to choose from.
Okay.
Some have either Frank Logan or one of his slaves, I guess, anyways, making the find in White County, Georgia, in Dukes Creek. Another version of the White County find has John Witherud, could be Witherow, finding a 3-ounce nugget of gold along Dukes Creek. Another version was that the North Carolina prospector Jesse Hogan found gold near Dahlonega, Georgia at Ward's Creek. Thomas Bowen supposedly found gold in the roots of a storm-blown tree along Dukes Creek. And Benjamin Parks found gold on his birthday in 1828 while walking along a deeper path, and subsequently he and his business partner Joel Stevens leased the site from Reverend O'Barr. However, none of these stories have any contemporary documents to support any of their validity.
None of them have the same location or anything.
Well, a lot of them are in Dukes Creek. So there are 3 out of the 6. Let's see, 1, 2, 3 of the 6 were at Dukes Creek. So we do have that. Then there's Ward's Creek. Or no, there's just 5. So 3 of the 5 were Dukes Creek. Yeah, 3 of the 5 were Dukes Creek.
But I mean,
yeah.
But not the same people.
Nope.
Nope.
So
this displeases me.
I know. Regardless of who made the discovery in 1828, the gold rush officially started in 1829 in Lumpkin County.
Lumpkin.
One of the first public accounts was on August 1st of 1829 when the Georgia Journal, I like that, the Georgia Journal, ran the following notice, quote, "Gold."
Was that it?
Dash.
Okay.
A gentleman of the first respectability in Habersham County writes us thus under date of 22nd July. 2 gold mines have just been discovered in this county, and preparations are making to bring these hidden treasures of the earth to use. So it appears that what we long anticipated has come to pass at last, namely that the gold region of North and South Carolina would be found to extend into Georgia. The Macon Telegraph reported that, quote, "In the winter of 1829 and 30, when the precious metals have been discovered in great abundance upon our Cherokee soil, great numbers of people from Georgia and other states rushed to the territory in search of its treasures." All right. The land that the gold was found under was under control of the Cherokee Nation.
Oh, no.
But because people are garbage, mining...
I haven't said that in a while.
Oh, I know. It's been a couple episodes. Mining operations quickly sprang up in Lumpkin, White, Union, and Cherokee counties, and this became known as the Great Intrusion.
Wasn't so great.
No. By 1830, the Nils Register estimated that there were 4,000 miners working on Yahula Creek alone.
Yahula.
I know. They were supposedly discovering more than 300 ounces of gold per day. The Philadelphia Mint received $212,000 in gold from Georgia in 1830. Other estimates in 1831 state that there were about 6,000 to 10,000 miners between the Chestatee River and the Etowah River. Boomtowns began to appear across the state of Georgia. Dahlonega was said to have supported 15,000 miners at the height of the gold rush. During this rapid influx of prospectors and settlers, tensions with the Cherokee tribe increased drastically.
Understandably.
Before long, gold mines appeared in most counties in the North Georgia mountains, including Georgia's northeasternmost county, Rabun. The accumulation of tensions between the Cherokee and various states, including Georgia, led to the forced migration of Native Americans, which we now know as the Trail of Tears. President Andrew Jackson authorized the Indian Removal Act in 1830, which allowed a takeover of the gold mining areas. The Cherokee Nation turned to the federal court system to avoid being forced off of their ancestral lands. The Supreme Court first ruled in favor of the state of Georgia in 1831 in a case known as Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, but the following year in Worcester versus Georgia, this decision was reversed to recognize the Cherokee as a sovereign nation. President Jackson proceeded with the removal of the remaining Cherokee from the North Carolina goldfields, North Georgia goldfields anyway. Didn't matter what the court said. He was still pushing for it. The state of Georgia held the gold lottery in 1832.
I've always liked a lottery.
And they awarded land to the winners in 40-acre tracts.
Oh.
All of the land awarded belonged to the Cherokee Nation that was taken from them due to the Indian Removal Act.
Oh.
The Philadelphia Mint received $1.1 million in gold from Georgia between 1830 and 1837. We talked just a bit ago about the mints being established, and this is in the area where the Dahlonega Mint opened. That was kind of like the largest boom town in this area. This was a direct testimony to the amount of gold being produced in Georgia. The establishment of the Dahlonega Mint was a tactic by the government to validate the state's actions in the early part of the century to seize Cherokee land.
See the shock and dismay on my face?
So they were essentially like, see, there is all of this money. Do you see all of this money in gold? See, we had a reason to throw all of these people off of their land and create the Trail of Tears. See? Hey, and that land that we took from you, we're going to do a lottery. And we're going to give that land to people who win the lottery, who did absolutely nothing to get it. We're going to give them 40 acres of that land at a time. And guess what? It's the land that you lived on for years before any of these white people came along. None of them.
Their diseases with them.
Ugh. When I was reading that, I didn't know that was tied to this.
I didn't either.
And I was like, I don't like it.
That's despicable.
I don't like it at all. Yeah. When the news of the California gold rush reached Georgia, miners ran west in search of more gold. The keeper of the Dahlonega Mint, who was M.F. Stevenson.
Stop it. Dramatic pause and keep moving.
This is Patreon. Anyways, he tried to convince them to stay. He stood on the Dahlonega courthouse steps and spoke to a large crowd of miners saying, quote, "Why go to California? In that ridge lies more gold than man ever dreamt of. There's millions in it." Yet, despite the mass exodus of miners to California, the mines in the Georgia Gold Belt continued to produce gold for years. Hydraulic mining and blast mining renewed interest in the 1850s, and there were around 500 mines in 37 different counties. The Civil War brought most of the operations to a halt, but a few operations continued after the war, and several mines were reworked in the 1930s.
Wow.
During the Great Depression. It is estimated that Georgia produced about 870,000 troy ounces of gold between 1828 and the mid-1900s. And that was when commercial gold production ceased. So a troy ounce is different than an ounce.
Okay.
By just like, not by much, but a troy ounce weighs more than a regular ounce of gold. So currently, today, 1 troy ounce is worth $61. 1. between 1828 and the mid 1900s, Georgia had produced 870,000 troy ounces of gold. So just 870,000 times 61. And that's how much money they were getting.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So before they were forced out of their homes, the Cherokee gained enough gold mining experience to participate in later gold rushes in California. Cherokee gold miners gave the name to the town of Cherokee, California, as well as to a number of other geographic features in the state's gold mining region. Experienced gold miners from Georgia played key roles in the beginning of gold mining in Colorado as well. Georgia miners Lewis and Samuel Ralston, along with some displaced Georgia Cherokee natives, noticed placer gold near the present site of Denver on their way to the Sierra Nevada goldfields in 1850. They returned east in 1857, having failed to strike it rich in the Sierra Nevada. Then they remembered the gold just east of the Rocky Mountains. Then later, William Greenberry Russell led a party of Cherokee and Georgia gold miners back to Colorado in 1858, and they began placer mining along the South Platte River in present-day Denver. The town of Golden, Colorado, is named after Georgia miner Thomas L. Golden. Another Georgia miner, John H. Gregory, discovered the first lode gold in Colorado in 1859. And in 1864, 4 prospectors known as the Georgians found one of the early gold placers in Montana at the Last Gulch.
The Last Gulch.
The site that this was became the state capital of Helena. And those are the gold rushes before the California gold rush. The actual first gold rushes, first in North Carolina and then in Georgia.
Interesting.
I thought that it was pretty interesting, and especially,
when you think gold rush, you think
California.
And like, there's one in Alaska too.
Yeah, and you automatically think like we learn about the California gold rush. Like it's California gold rush. That's just what it is. But when we talked about it in one of our episodes, when I said that there was a gold rush early on, and a lot of people actually try to coin Georgia as the first gold rush, and it's not. It's the second. So anyways, I found it really interesting. I thought that it was a good it's an interesting
Something
topic.
To debunk.
And I didn't know either that was the reasoning behind the Indian Removal Act was because of gold.
Well, it's always money.
I mean, it's always money, but I thought it might have just been for land because
land is money.
Right. I thought maybe it was just like Georgia wasn't very densely populated. Like that area just didn't have a lot of people. So it was best for them to try and obtain the land themselves. And then, I wasn't sure, but I definitely did not know that it was tied to gold.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
I was very shocked by that. So,
I would think farming or,
Or this was
selling.
After the Seminole War. So I thought maybe it had something to do with the Seminole War because of Florida and Georgia being right there. And like maybe the Cherokee had something to do, I wasn't sure where all that came in, but
Never thought it'd have to do with gold mining.
Gold mining. Yeah. And then the fact that they had a court case where they lost. Then they had a court case again and they won. And Jackson was just like,
meh,
bye. I'm not listening. Bye.
Yeah.
Like I said, when we had our episode on him, on Jackson, I was like, he's very problematic. But like people still consider him one of the great presidents. But he's very problematic.
Well, part of the reason that he's problematic is part of the reason that he was a good president is he was very, if he believed in something, he believed in it 100% and he went after it.
But that's not always a great thing.
Because he believed that he was right. But that didn't mean that he was right.
Exactly. It's just, I mean,
he was driven and he made things happen.
And
that's admirable to an extent, but
not when you're screwing people over for their land.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you're right. No. And that's where you have to really look at it.
Well, and just because of everything that we've talked about, and especially with having this podcast, we've discussed a lot about slavery. We've discussed a lot about, Native Americans and Indian, regardless of what you choose to use as your terminology, we've, as we figured out, it's pretty much any way you want, as long as it's not something super derogatory. But, the more we do these episodes and the more that we find out about things, it's definitely the what your kindergarten and first grade teacher didn't tell you. It's very much like there was a lot more that we were, and I get you're not old enough to understand that stuff, but I also have a problem because now that I have a child that's in school and is about to start going through that, I have a problem with, I remember some things that I learned because history obviously was my favorite subject. And I remember having a lot of things that I learned that I was almost nostalgic looking back on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learn about it and I'm like, oh no, it wasn't like that at all.
It's sugar-coated.
Yeah.
Glossed over.
And it is both. It is both because it is sugar-coated and then we're going to cut a lot of it out. And it's I get it to an extent, but that is also the reason I like doing this podcast because we get to learn about those things.
Mm-hmm.
I like that we get to talk about them because it's one of those things that I feel evolves over time that people don't know about. And the more people don't talk about it, the more it's going to disappear.
Yeah, it's going to be forgotten.
It will be forgotten.
Well, and with you and me both, we both have loved to read.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have learned a lot. I mean, I love historical novels. And I've learned a lot through those books. And that's just what I love to read. I love a period piece. Oh my goodness, I love a period piece. No, I mean, whatever the period. I just, take me away to another time. I love that. I mean, I love history. And I have learned a lot through that. But people who don't read and well, I mean, they may not have paid attention in school either. But you don't learn those things. I mean, there've been things that I've talked about with other people and they've been like, what are you talking about? And I'm just like, did you not listen in school?
Yeah.
Have you not read a book? And they haven't. And I teach them about it because that's just who I am.
I mean, you didn't know about the reverse Underground Railroad.
I did not.
I knew about it because I just because of things that I had read and because of 7 Years a Slave and because of things like that.
And
I knew about it.
That's on my list to watch and I have not watched it yet.
It's heavy.
Yeah, and I think that's why I haven't watched it because me, I've tried to push that away.
I think it was
take medicine to keep me not.
I don't watch. I don't watch movies about animals. Period, because I always know the animal's going to die.
Right,
so
I'm the same way.
I've
had to stop watching those.
I've never seen Marley and Me ever. The second I looked at it, I went, the dog's going to die. I can't.
I read the book and I was like, why did you do that?
The last book that I read that revolved around a dog was because of Winn-Dixie.
Try reading that to a second grade class and holding yourself together.
No.
It was bad.
I wouldn't watch the movie when they came out with the movie.
It was bad.
I didn't watch it. Even though it wasn't a bad ending. It was just, it was
a great book. I mean, I do encourage you to have your children read it because it is good to understand emotions.
But it's also like Flowers for Algernon, which was about the mouse. Anyways, and I was forced to read that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things looking back on, I knew about it because of 7 Years a Slave. And I want to say I was it was a film class that I took that I had, because otherwise it wouldn't have been something that I would have watched.
Yeah.
and I want to say it's a film class that I had to watch it in. And we were discussing books made to film and different things like that. But there are so many things that we're not aware of, which is also part of true crime, because true crime is a whole world that people don't know about if you don't know about it. I mean, and it is
sometimes it's good not to know about
it. Sometimes it really is, but honestly, it's one of those things that, you know, they always say they don't understand why women are fascinated with true crime. Well, because women are most likely to be the victims. And so it's kind of like a weird way of, I want to know how to protect like myself. And I'm interested in it because most of the time it is women that are involved. And so
women like to talk about feelings and try to figure out the why.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because there's just a lot of things like that. But yeah, like true crime is a whole world that if people don't know about it, people are like, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand why you like true crime. And it's like, it's not that I like it. It's not that I'm like, oh my gosh, I appreciate it as a subject because I like the psychology behind it.
And that's, but I like the history part that we bring to our podcast because we love history.
Because we love history too. And so it's always interesting. And of course, how that ties back to all of our cases and how like the history influences the case. Mm-hmm. Because they always tie together somehow. There's some through line. Like when we did the episode about the reverse Underground Railroad, it was around the time when there was a lot of emancipation, because the Emancipation Proclamation hadn't happened yet, but there was a lot of the northern states were becoming free states and the southern states were not. And like you kind of start to see that divide in the two. Right. And then you start to see like, okay, here's the divide. And then this is the garbage that was happening with people tricking freed people back or just escaped people back. And then you start to see the divide and you start to see the push. And like we're about to get into Civil War times.
You see that unrest. You see it boiling. Like that,
that's definite tension.
You see the water starting to boil. Those bubbles are just starting to come up and starting to come up. That's where we are.
And
it's starting.
It's interesting to see what ends up happening and what ends up being where. But definitely the gold rush was something that I was not aware of, especially with us being in the South. I was very shocked to not know about that because typically that would be something we would have learned. Like I'm very confused as to why we didn't.
I bet if we lived in Georgia.
Yeah, I bet if we lived in the Carolinas or Georgia, we definitely would have. But it was just interesting to me that we didn't.
Because like in fourth grade, you do Alabama history.
Right.
So in fourth grade in Georgia, you do Georgia history.
Right.
You know?
Right. It was very interesting to me. So, is what it is. But the South, I guess, can claim the first gold rush. So there's that.
There you go.
We appreciate you guys checking out this episode of USBS. Your amazing contributions help produce, edit, and publish One Nation Under Crime. And USBS is our way of thanking you for everything that you do and give back to us.
Yes, it is.
You know where to find us on all of the things by now if you're here. But also remember, you can send suggestions for what you want us to cover on USBS. You can email it to our email, onenationundercrime@gmail.com. You can also message us on any of our social media pages or send us a message through your Patreon homepage. You can send us a message through there as well. But we will take requests. And if there's something that you want us to cover, we are more than happy to do it. I guess that's pretty much it for us this time.
It's been swell.
It has. And we will see you here next time with more BS
from the US.
We love you guys
so much.
And you are our favorites, but don't tell the others.
Don't do it.
Or do.
encourage them to be Patreon so they can be our favorites too.
Make yourself feel a little elite to others. It's not a bad thing.
Because you are.
And
you're the real pink starters, but don't tell.
And always remember, it's BS to have to remember that in the U.S., there isn't always liberty and justice for all. We love you guys
so much. Mwah.
Goodbye.
Bye.